In this lecture, we're going to be talking about information processing. So what is the information processing approach? This is an approach to development that focuses on ways that people process information about the world, the way they manipulate information, monitor it, and create strategies to deal with it. The effectiveness of our information processing involves attention, memory, and thinking. The information processing approach to studying development often compares our way of handling information to the way that computers handle information. We take input from the environment, such as keystrokes for a computer or sights and sounds for humans, and then process that information in some way. Similar to how a computer's hardware and software store and manipulate that input, we use our brains and thought processes to organize information and perform mental operations. Then an output is generated, such as solutions to a problem or an emotional reaction to a situation. This is an extremely oversimplified model of information processing. Something happens in the environment. Whether and how we pay attention to it affects the probability of us moving that information into our conscious recollection, a process called encoding. Not all attention is the same. For example, if you're tired, then you might have a hard time sustaining attention during class and may miss some information. You may be engaging in selective attention, trying to pay attention to the instructor while ignoring the people who are talking in the hallway. Or you may be engaged in divided attention, where you are trying to pay attention to more than one thing at a time, such as trying to text with your friend and follow the lecture at the same time. Some information will make it through and some won't. If you are paying attention, that information gets encoded and is briefly stored in short-term memory. Again, this is an oversimplification, but let's say you meet someone and the person tells you their name. How often do you realize almost immediately that you have forgotten their name? What's going on here is that your short-term memory is called that because it has a very limited duration. Generally, unless you actually do something with the information you just received, then that information will be gone in about 20 to 30 seconds. You can only work with so many pieces of information at once before it becomes difficult to hold on to it. If you only need a few things from the grocery store, it's easy to remember. But beyond 7 items, you'll probably want to make a list or use some other memory technique like a song or an acronym. Short-term memory is in contrast with long-term memory, which is theoretically permanent and limitless. We haven't seen any evidence that you have a finite amount of knowledge that you can have, or that you will reach a point where learning a new fact will push an old memory out of your head or anything like that. Long-term memory can be episodic or semantic. Episodic memory has to do with events or experiences, like that time a gallon of milk burst open in the trunk of my car. Semantic memory has to do with general knowledge, such as how to tie your shoes or what the capital of Texas is. With the information contained in our short-term and long-term memory, we engage in thinking. We manipulate and transform information as we engage in things like problem-solving, making judgments, strategizing, and so on. Finally, based on all these processes, we respond. This can be a split-second decision, or it could be a long, deliberative process, or anywhere in between. The way we process information changes as we age, and these are some of the mechanisms by which that change occurs. First is the way we encode information. Encoding refers to how information gets into our memory in the first place. As we get older, we get better at knowing what information is relevant and what is irrelevant. So we encode the relevant input and we ignore the irrelevant stuff. Automaticity is the ability to process information with little to no effort. At first, reading was a very deliberative process because we had to think carefully about each sound that each letter combination makes. Over time, though, the reading process became more and more automatic, freeing up our mental space to think more deeply about the meaning and implications of what we are reading. We also started to discover new strategies and procedures for processing information. For example, learning to use context clues while reading can help us better understand a passage even when we come across an unknown word. Finally, we engage in metacognition. This is sometimes called thinking about thinking or knowing about knowing. As we pay attention to what helps us understand things, and as we modify our approach to information, our ability to process information becomes faster and more efficient. In fact, the speed of processing, our speed of processing, is a big part of how information processing is assessed. It is common to use reaction time tests, such as how long it takes a person to push a button after hearing a question or seeing an image. We're testing how quickly a person can respond. People who take longer to process information take longer to respond. Our speed of processing improves dramatically from the time that we are children to the time that we are adolescents and young adults, and then it declines starting in middle adulthood. This graph is showing that our response time takes longer and longer as we age. Of course, we can't respond very effectively to something that we never noticed in the first place. Attention is a critical part of information processing.